allowing the EPA to regulate and reduce greenhouse gases. Now, this is not just CO2. We're not talking just about CO2, but we're talking about sulfur hexafluoride, which is a highly toxic man-made chemical. And there's production companies that manufacture this. It's a very potent greenhouse gas. So there's a whole group of greenhouse gases, not just one, CO2.
Understand.
Well, what happened is this was a historic vote because they've been trying to pass in this climate legislation this Ponzi scheme whereby polluting corporations would be allowed to continue polluting at current or ever-increasing levels by buying offsets. And in the House climate energy bill that passed, what they did is they were going to restrict the regulations on greenhouse gases, and they were going to undermine the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act to allow natural gas fracking.
What is that?
Fracking. Okay, fracking means that natural gas is underground in shale deposits. If these companies take water and sand and toxic chemicals and under pressure inject them underground, they can extract the natural gas. The problem is that they need a large supply of water that they contaminate with toxic chemicals like benzene,
right,
cancer-causing chemicals,
yes,
and other things.
Yes.
And that areas that they have been doing this natural gas drilling, they have discovered that it's this water and toxic chemicals are seeping into people's wells, and they're threatening the water supply, for example, of New York City. So there's a lot of people that are opposing this natural gas drilling because of the method that pollutes water supplies for miles and miles and miles in every direction of where they are doing this natural gas drilling.
Got it.
So what happened is that in this climate bill, they wanted to set up a scheme whereby they would allow companies to buy and sell these credits so that they could continue polluting for at least 7 years or more at current levels without any reduction at all of anything. And then after that time, then there would be a 20% reduction. Well, the scheme is not designed to do anything about climate change. The scheme is designed to enrich the banks on Wall Street with this buying and selling of pollution credits on the market.
I'm going to tell you, though, from a different paradigm on this. I'm going to respond to what you're saying. There is, from my experience, this is my research, no climate change problem, since climate change is a cycle. And the public has been deliberately confused about the distinction between climate and weather, A, because climate is looked at over long periods of time.
That's right.
And weather is looked at in terms of what's happening with weather in the here and the now. It's more short term. A. B, if climate change is a natural cycle, which it has been, that means it's not a problem. It's a natural cycle. And there is cooling and warming and cooling and warming. The bottom line is, you'd have to hear my number one climate show that I did went all over the world. There's been at least 25,000 people that's heard it or more since December 7th. And the reality is that when you're doing an analysis on the condition of weather or anything, and you deliberately omit information, you deliberately construct scenarios and then call that reality, like simulations, instead of taking real data. When you design a cap and trade system that brings in architects who have created the derivatives marketplace from JP Morgan Chase, and you bring in people like Enron as architects, there's something bad and smelly about the players, the influences, the designers of this system. So when you bring together the EPA, which may have started out, and I believe started out being really good, okay? But now can turn around and say, hi, you're made of carbon, you breathe out carbon, plants and trees and all of life need carbon dioxide, and it's always been a nutrient, can now overnight just say it's a toxin we now have to control, so we have to get into all of your lives. They can pass a law in Congress that they can tell us we have to have mercury-laden light bulbs because they're going to get rid of all the light bulbs we're using. I don't even know if I can use full-spectrum light bulbs, the best light bulbs in the world, the most natural to sunlight. They're going to regulate every part of our lives. When you have designers of the derivatives marketplace in finance, the most gruesome instruments, designing this system, this is not a pure system. This is not about taking out the bad chemicals from the environment. This is not about stopping underwater explosions and projects of the Navy or the Air Force or whoever governmentally and non-governmentally is doing this. It's not about that at all.
No.
And it's not about getting rid of pollution. They are now taking a nutrient to all plants and animals and calling it a toxin because it's convenient.
Well, no, because they want money, too.
Yeah, it's convenient and they want money and they can do it. This is about taxing people for breathing. And if you don't think it's going to happen, it's already in the works. I think it's very interesting to note, and I'm not into politics at all, but I'm watching it because I'm very concerned about the details of what's unfolding. I find it disturbing that the climate change bill is being ushered through while the Gulf Coast disaster was happening. I feel it's inappropriate to be doing that while people are responding to this terrible disaster that's ongoing.
Oh, I don't.
It's like that has to be done out in the daylight, not why people all over the country are traumatized. And this happens a lot in governments. And by the way, from every walk of government, left, right, center, whatever. Every time there's a major disaster, some bill, some new legislation, some new something is ushered in, and most of the Congress people have not read it, don't understand it because it's so elongated, and it passes. And this, to me, is the blueprint for a deceptive governmental body. It doesn't matter what it is.
And that's why I'm opposing it.
I just want to be on the record for where I stand about it. I am losing patience listening, not to you, but people who don't understand and are not willing to be receptive to the possibility that there is a global agenda in the works. And they mean business, and they're going to prey upon environmental advocates like us to get on board this agenda and distort all the information so that we have no idea what we're even thinking about, so that we can't see and think clearly. And I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, I ask everyone to read the bill before they consider letting someone tell them how to vote on it. So I think that's another thing. And I want to say that we've been heavily fighting this climate bill because it has nothing in it that will do anything for the climate. It will take us back to the dark ages, and it will enrich Wall Street and the banks. It's a derivatives market scheme, and the banks are written into the House bill. The banks are written into Barbara Boxer's bill, 1733 on climate change. I mean, why are you writing the banks into a bill? It's a terrible bill. I mean, it's just terrible. But see, Senator Reid is talking about introducing a few bills next week. And one of those bills is going to go for turning all of our trucks, our diesel trucks, into using natural gas. And they're going to start drilling for enriching Halliburton and poisoning our rivers and our waters and our wells by this fracking process used in natural gas. And I'm just going to have everyone call, in other words, up the EPA and call their senators and congressmen and say, don't vote for this bill because you've got a fracking problem that's going to be enormous.
Apparently, the new financial bill that has moved through, I think it's the Senate, is over 2,200 pages long. Who the heck is going to read that?
It's almost impossible. They're almost impossible to read, but not quite, but almost. But it's going to be up to us to look at the legislation and pull as much as we can to show what's wrong with these bills. But they want the bills too large because then the senators don't read them, the House members don't read them, they don't know what it say, and they can put so many whereases in from lobbyists that they actually neutralize the bill for the benefit of the large corporations. So that's the problem with these large bills.
Let's go back after my heated downpour of
Oh.
frustration and disturbance with what's unfolding.